The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning to all of you. I hope all of you are keeping safe and healthy. On behalf of our embassy, I convey a warm welcome to all of you, including our distinguished speakers from Rodel and Partner, to today's webinar, which focuses on the topic of regulations for establishing a joint venture in India for market entry and expansion. Friends, India's economic growth is attracting business houses from across the world, and joint venture is a popular method to enter India. Foreign companies also need to be aware of the corporate structures that they choose when working in India. And our experts that we have today with us will throw light on the regulations and the various tax aspects that are applicable for foreign companies when entering into joint ventures in India. For those of you who are not aware of our Make in India Mittelstand program, let me now say just a few lines about this program. To convert the intent and part of the German business community into actual investments in India, we from the Embassy of India, Berlin, had initiated a dedicated and strategic program in 2015 called the Make in India Mittelstand. The program is also described as, in a way, India's red carpet for the German Mittelstand. The program is run on behalf of our embassy by the EuroAsia Consulting as a knowledge partner, which is supported by a network of other competent partners such as Rodel & Partner, Kaitan & Co., which function as the tax and legal partners for the program, the Indo-German Chamber of Commerce, which acts as the partner chamber, as well as many banks such as the Deutsche Bank, the KfW, the DEG, and the SBI as financing partners, the Global Innovation and Technology Alliance of CII as a technology partner, and many state governments in India who assist German companies in terms of their operations in the states. The program partners offer expert services in the fields of investment consulting, tax and legal, financial services, and project financing for market entry or expansion, feasibility studies, etc. The Make in India Mittelstand program also provides free of cost benefits by way of special workshops, networking, information exchange, etc. Invest India, which is the official government agency for investment promotion, and 9 Indian state governments, as I mentioned earlier, are also program partners who assist with regulations and permission-related issues to facilitate investment. Currently, the program organizes at least 2 webinars in a month on topics relevant to the German Mittelstand companies. Friends, the MIM program has entered its 6th year in September 2020, facilitating 151 Mittelstand member companies and facilitating a declared investment of about 1.4 billion. I take this opportunity from the embassy to welcome German Mittelstand companies to take advantage of the services provided under this program for their planned investments or expansions in India. I thank you for your kind attention. Now back to you, Ketan.
Thank you, Mr. Vedal, for giving us a MIM introduction and also welcome remarks. Now I would like to welcome Mr. Soumitra Dole, who is our first presenter. He will speak on regulations for establishing a JV company in India, common risk areas, important terms to have JV agreements, and etc. Mr. Dole is an Indian lawyer and senior advocate at Pune office. He has been working with Rodel & Partners since January 2018. He has over 7 years of experience in dealing in corporate laws. He primarily advises German middle-sized companies and global companies on their investment projects in India. His main focus is on corporate law, M&A transactions, and Indian exchange law. He has extensive experience in implementation and management of Indian due diligence and M&A projects of German companies. So thank you very much, Soumitra, for joining in today. And please proceed with your presentation. I have just made you presenter, so you can share your screen now. Yeah, we can see your screen.
So thank you, Ketan, for the brief introduction. Good morning to all German attendees, and good afternoon to attendees from India. As we know that due to the corona pandemic, all the international scenario has changed, and India is moving towards a manufacturing hub. With that, the few initiatives from Indian government, like your Atmanirbhar Bharat and the other initiatives, which is actually helping the manufacturing sector. From that, now for German companies to come in India, it is a very good opportunity. And for that, JV is one of the aspects, so that they can establish a JV and for either for market entry or for having a market expansion in India. So from JV perspective, I'm actually dealing with from legal side, what are the main objects or what are the laws applicable for establishing a joint venture in India. So I've break down my presentation into three aspects. One is the regulatory aspect, second is the due diligence, and the third one is the important clauses which you should have while entering in a JV agreement. So from regulatory aspects, so from entry aspects, you have two options to come in India. One is private or public limited company, which is governed by the Companies Act, and the other one is a limited liability partnership, which is governed by the Limited Liability Partnership Act. So private limited is or public limited company is a limited company wherein you have a share capital and the joint venture partners put in the share capital and they carry on the business. Whereas in limited liability partnership, there is a concept, no concept of share capital. There is a concept of there is a concept of capital to be brought in by the partners in the form of a contribution, and it is to be brought in the ratio which is mentioned in the limited liability partnership agreement. So from this, actually, you know, there are advantages and disadvantages for having a private limited company as well as having a limited liability partnership. So one of the major disadvantage of having a limited liability partnership is that the ECB loan, which is the external commercial borrowing loans to be given by outside parties to the Indian entity, the limited liability partnerships cannot avail the external commercial loan from any foreign parties. So we usually prefer to have either a private limited company or a public limited company in India in order to have a joint venture partnership. Moving on to the other aspects, these are the certain laws which are applicable to the joint venture. So first of all, we have to consider the Foreign Exchange Control Laws, that is the Foreign Exchange Management Act and Foreign Exchange Management Non-Debt Instrument Rules. These are the rules which govern the foreign investment into Indian entities. So most of the sectors fall under automatic route, and in most of the sectors, 100% foreign investment under automatic route is allowed. However, there are still certain sectors wherein the foreign investment is specifically not allowed, or even if it is allowed, it is allowed with a government approval, or even in some sectors, even the 100% foreign investment is still not allowed. So there you need to have certain participation from the Indian entities. Again, it is very important to know the exchange control laws for adhering to the external commercial borrowings for loan to be obtained from foreign parties. This is very essential because whenever you are entering in a joint venture agreement, it is very necessary to have a joint business plan wherein funding requirement is one of the requirements, and for that the parties should be clear on whether it is to be funded through equity participation or through loans from both the parties. And for that, it is very essential to adhere to the external commercial borrowing guidelines of RBI. Then next is the adherence to the import-export guidelines. Again, it is very essential to have these import-export guidelines because most of the JVs have technical collaborations wherein the goods flow from India or to Germany or from Germany to India. And then again, it is very essential to know the import-export guidelines. So this should be considered while formulating a JV, and accordingly it should be formed. Then the Companies Act or the Limited Liability Partnership Act, as I mentioned earlier, that these are the basic acts which are applicable since either you form a private limited company or either you form a limited liability partnership. So these acts actually govern the entity or the joint venture entity. They give you the minimum number of directors which you should have, and the other provisions for day-to-day running of the company, like meetings and how to conduct the meetings and how it should be done. So these are the basics act which are applicable. Then comes various labor laws, which are applicable. Like you have different laws. Now, the one good thing about labor laws is that Indian government recently passed certain laws which are actually combining a plethora of labor laws which are applicable to various industries into 4 separate labor laws, which is going to simplify the work of the industries, because right now there are different laws, and even there are certain industry specific laws which you have to follow, like for food industry, there is a food safety laws which has to be followed. So apart from the labor laws which are applicable to all the industries, there are some industry specific laws which again have to be complied with. So while entering in a JV, again this has to be checked that what laws are applicable, and of course the exchange control laws have to be taken into consideration for formulating the business plan for the JV. Then coming on to the next topic is the role of due diligence. So this is actually been applicable in case the Indian entity is already formed and German entity wants to make a participation in an already formed Indian entity, or the JV entity I would call. Then it becomes very essential to have conduct a due diligence of such entity, as due diligence it helps buyer to assess the value of the business and to verify the information pertaining to the business in order to determine whether to proceed with the purchase or not, actually whether to enter in a JV or not. Again, it permits the buyer to determine if there are any barriers or risks associated with the transaction, and whether you can mitigate those risks before entering in a transaction, or you can have certain caveats in the transaction that if there are any past liabilities, then the Indian promoters or the current promoters of that company should indemnify the new JV partner. Conducting a due diligence is very essential step while forming a JV. So while the conceptualization with the Indian partner is in the process, we always recommend to conduct a due diligence. So the due diligence is divided in 3 parts. One is a legal due diligence, one is tax due diligence, and third one is a financial due diligence. So legal due diligence is the overall status of compliances done by the company. So this includes obtaining various registrations which the company has to obtain to carry on its business. Then you have then the various compliances which are required to be done under such registrations and under various acts. This also includes reviewing of all the contracts and litigations of the company, and whether there are any liabilities coming out of those contracts, and sometimes there are clauses in some contracts that if there is any change in the shareholding structure happening, or if any third party is coming on board in the company, then you will have to intimate the other party. So these sort of compliances which have to be undertaken by that company from the possible JV. So these all points are highlighted in a legal due diligence, which helps a buyer to see what all compliances they have to done after forming a JV, plus what are the possible liabilities which may come because of certain past non-compliances, and whether the indemnification is to be taken from the present promoters for the past liabilities. So same goes with the tax due diligence. So in tax due diligence, whether all the taxes, so like income tax, GST, service tax earlier, or excise duty, whether they have been paid, whether they have been properly paid or not, whether there have been any compliances made with the tax laws, and if there are any possible liabilities or penalties which may come from this tax due diligence, then we highlight those points. Then comes a financial due diligence. So financial due diligence is very important to know the financial parameters of the company which is being considered for as a JV company. So that actually financial due diligence helps to know the financial parameters as well as the operative effectiveness and the earnings quality. So this includes taking a various ratios like the debt realization period and the profit ratios and the payables period, how and this will actually help the JV partner to define certain rules while entering in a JV, so that if as per the as per the standards of German company, that payables or any payment is to be made after certain days, then accordingly that can be incorporated in the JV entity, and this will help them to know the financial parameters and other things. So conducting a due diligence is very essential step if you are acquiring present Indian entity. So apart from this, even conducting a due diligence of your JV partner. So if you are forming a new entity, then conducting the due diligence of a JV partner is also important to know their credentials and financial background and financial capabilities, because sometimes you need the money to be infused in the JV to scale up the operation. So that time it is better to know what are the financial capabilities of your JV partner. So if you are entering in a JV as a new entity, so it is very essential even to do due diligence of the JV partner to know all these parameters. So this is regarding the due diligence. Now moving to my third topic of this webinar is the important clauses and terms of JV. So it is very essential to have a JV agreement or what we call as a shareholders agreement in place, because that defines certain regulations for the operations to be carried on by the JV entity, and this then again includes various clauses like what should be the shareholding percentage. Now, if usually what we have seen is that the German entities which goes into manufacturing, so manufacturing usually have 100% automatic investment route under foreign exchange laws. So it is very essential to know what should be the shareholding percentage, whether it should be 50-50, whether it should be 51-49 or 74-26 or 75-25. So that needs to be first of all clarified with the Indian partner. Then comes a board composition of the JV entity. So this is very crucial. So as in India, most of the decisions are taken by the board of directors. As per Companies Act, for a private limited company, minimum 2 directors are required, and for a publicly limited company, minimum 3 directors are required. Now, and out of which one has to be a resident director. That is a resident. It means a person who has stayed in India for more than 180 days in the previous financial year. So it is not required that he should be a citizen of India, but he has to stay in India for more than 180 days. So it is very necessary to know what shall be the composition of board of directors, whether the parties have a right to appoint a chairman, and whether the chairman has a casting vote, because that matters in case there is a deadlock and if any decision is to be made. Then another important clause is the addition of capital. So the JV starts with a certain capital, and if after some days, if you see that another capital is required for scaling up the production or for some other reason, then in that case it is very essential to have this additional capital infusion clause, so that it clarifies that who is going to bring in additional capital in what percentage and what should be the mechanism. So usually we give the waterfall mechanism. In this case, that first you use the internal savings, and then how the parties should go from one option to other if the other options are closed. Then apart from this, it is very essential to have a joint venture business plan done. at the time of entering in the joint venture agreement, because it is very essential to have this joint venture business plan, and accordingly you have to move as per that business plan. It also gives the services or the manufacturing which is to be done in India, so that you have a clarity that what products are to be done in India. For an example, we were working on one JV agreement wherein the two partners they were discussing that which products are to be produced, and at the end it came to the conclusion, after doing all the due diligence and all the drafting of agreements, they came to the conclusion that the two partners, they are not agreeing on a production of a same product. So one party wants one product to be produced, and another party wants other product to be produced. So then this decision should be taken upfront before starting any procedure for the JV. Then the veto matters again, or we call it as affirmative rights. So these are the certain matters wherein approval of both the parties are required, or usually the party having a majority is required. This includes various aspects like dividend policy or the dividend to be declared, any changes in the remuneration of directors, any changes in the business plan which has been agreed by the parties, or any changes in the business of the company, or any alterations to be made with the memorandum or articles of the company, which are the founding documents of the company. So this is very important to have these veto matters. Then of course the transfer of shares and the call put option. So it is also necessary to know whether the JV partner is willing to continue as a JV partner, or whether at some point of time he wants to be taken over by the other JV partner. So then you should have this call and put options in the agreement. It can be based on certain parameters like the number of years or the profits to be done by the JV. So this is very essential, and this also includes that the right of first refusal, that this parties cannot sell it to the third party before giving an option to the existing member to purchase the shares. Then comes to non-compete provisions. Again, this is very, very important to have these clauses in the agreement, so that in case there is a dispute and if the JV terminates, then there should be some assurance to both the parties that there won't be any competing provisions or the competing business to be done for a certain period of time. Of course, you cannot put lifelong restrictions, but there has to be some reasonable restrictions for having a non-compete provision. So if even the Competition Act, there are judgments saying that a reasonable restriction for non-compete is acceptable. Then comes a deadlock mechanism. So usually if there are only two parties to the joint venture, then on a certain matters, if there is a deadlock and if the JV is unable to function, then you should have a deadlock mechanism embedded in the agreement, so that you have to go as per the deadlock mechanism which has been agreed by the parties. So this usually includes a call put option to be given, and accordingly both the parties have to agree. and in case of deadlock, that has to be followed. Then apart from the shareholders or the joint venture agreement, there are other important agreements which are to be entered into, and what usually we have seen is the technical collaboration agreement, because usually the JVs formed in India, they have technical support from Germany, or from other countries. So it is very essential to have this technical collaboration agreement, which should mention that what technology has been provided, who is the owner of the technology, and what remuneration the provider should get. Yeah, so again, this is very important to have the technical collaboration agreement in place while providing any technology to the JV. Apart from that, again, if the Indian promoters are to be appointed as a director, then their employment agreements again is a very necessary agreements which are to be entered into. Yes, so these are the some necessary agreements which should be entered while entering in a JV. So just to sum up, that while entering in a JV, one has to understand what exactly is required from that JV, and what are the applicable laws where you can make an informed decisions, and also it is very necessary to have very foolproof and the binding agreements, so that even if in case the things go south, then you have a concrete agreements in place to have a speedy redressal system. So I think these are the main points from my side on these three aspects, and I think once you have a good agreements and other things sorted, then we see that the JVs grow like anything. So yes, so I think that is it from my side. I think, Ketan, the question answers will be taken at the end of the session, correct?
Yes, Soumitra. Thank you very much for giving us insights into the regulations aspects of joint venture agreement. Now, I would like to welcome Mr. Gaurav Makhijani, who will be throwing us, who will be speaking on the tax aspects of establishing joint ventures in India. To briefly introduce Gaurav is qualified chartered accountant and MBA finance from Symbiosis University, Pune. He has around 10 years of diverse experience in corporate and international taxation, including 8 years of experience in Big Four consulting or accounting firms. His key area of expertise includes corporate tax strategy and planning, tax due diligence, inbound investment advisory, and structuring cross-border in transactions. He has also authored a book named Bloomsbury Desk References for Professionals, Direct Tax Portion, and contributed various articles in professional journals. So thank you very much, Gaurav, for joining today. And I'm
Thank you so much.
just shifting the presentation rights to you, so you can share your presentation.
Can you see it now?
Yes.
Great. Okay, yeah. So good morning, everyone joining us from Germany, and good afternoon to our Indian colleagues. As far as the tax consideration for joint venture is concerned, Let us first start with the framework which India has for taxation laws. So on your screen, you would see the broad pillars of the taxation framework in India. It's more or less very same to what every other countries in Europe or in Germany would have. So basically the taxation framework in India would be divided into direct tax and indirect tax. Under the direct tax, we have the local domestic tax law, which is the Indian Income Tax Act 1961, containing all the provision of how to compute the taxation in India. When we say that a particular person is resident in India and non-resident, how would the taxation would be computed for different resident and non-resident? What are the types of income and what are the compliance, etc., and what are the penalty provision for non-compliance, etc. So everything related to the domestic tax law is provided in the Indian Income Tax Act. Plus, there are certain rules, and because India is a common law country, we follows the judicial precedent, and that has been used by the courts to interpret the relevant provision of the Income Tax Act. Also, India has the tax treaty network with various countries, including Germany, which has certain favorable beneficial provision. And as per the Indian law, the beneficial provision would apply as compared to Income Tax Act. So whenever you have a beneficial provision in the tax treaty, that would apply. It's as same as any other country would have this regulation. Apart from this, if you have a related party transaction, the international transaction with any Indian associated enterprise, you need to follow the transfer pricing regulation and the country by country regulation requirement as provided by the OECD. Now, this transfer pricing regulation is very similar to what OECD has, and at times we use OECD module or OECD transfer pricing guideline to interpret or to undertake certain compliance. Apart from that, recently India has also introduced a digital tax, a digital service tax, which is in India we call it equalization levy. It is applicable on non-resident at the rate of 2% for any online sale of goods or online supply of services via a digital platform. Now, apart from this, we have an indirect tax regime, which comprises of custom regulation and foreign trade practices to regulate or to levy taxes on the import and export. Plus, Indian government also provides certain benefits for export-related matters such as duty drawback, etc. So that's provided in the foreign trade policy. Also, in India, we have a value-added tax, which is locally known as good and service tax. It's applicable on the local sale and purchase of goods and services. Now, this was about the overall tax framework. Now, coming on to the topic of today on the joint venture investment and what are the tax consideration which any joint venture, any foreign investor while investing in the joint venture in India would need to be mindful of. Now, the first and foremost, the most important point or area of interest for any investor would be that if I invest in India, what would be the rate of tax which would be applicable in that particular entity in India? And once I repatriate tax, what would be my cost in India for that? And also, if I'm talking about German perspective, German investor would like to know the overall tax from investment, the income tax, the repatriation tax in India, as well as in Germany. So as far as India taxation is concerned, if you incorporate a JV company in India now from financial year 2019-20, that is from 1st April 2019, if you have any domestic company in India, even if it was established before 1st April 2019, the corporate tax rate has been reduced to 22%. Plus, there is certain surcharge and education cess, which takes the effective tax rate to 25.17%. Now, this as compared to the earlier tax rate of 35%, there has been a boost. I mean, the entire reduced corporate tax rate has it has made the Indian market very competitive as in the Asia Pacific region, and it is almost one of the lowest tax rates in the Asia Pacific region. Also, more importantly, if you are planning a manufacturing company or entity in India or production company in India, and if you establish a new company, a new manufacturing company, then the tax rate applicable would be 15%, plus surcharge and education cess, which would take your effective tax rate to 17%. So that's the rate which is applicable on the income earned by the Indian company or the joint venture company. But if you establish a limited liability partnership, the tax rates are 30% plus surcharge and cess. So as far as India taxes are concerned, the corporate form of business would be preferable from tax perspective. But then you need to see from overall tax perspective which would be beneficial, whether the company form of business or LLP form of business. And also, while undertaking an LLP form of business, you need to understand the approval requirement in India. For example, if you are planning a trading activity only, you might face challenge. But if you're planning only a service entity, LLP could be explored as an option. Now, when you make an investment into India, you need to decide the fair mix of equity versus debt. And therefore, from tax perspective, you need to understand what are the implications when you invest in equity. Obviously, the primary contribution, the share capital would be in equity form. And then if you need to invest further, you need to see the debt form, and that needs to make part in the joint venture agreement as well. On what investment would be done in future. So as far as taxation is concerned, if you invest in equity, the return on equity is dividend. Now, India earlier had this dividend distribution tax, which provided that any Indian company distributing dividend would be required to pay dividend distribution tax. So suppose if a company in India is distributing tax dividend to a Indian JV partner and a foreign JV partner, the liability to pay the dividend tax was on the Indian company, and it was a fixed rate. Because of that, the foreign investor were not able to utilize the beneficial tax treaty rate, which was under India-Germany tax treaty was 10%, and the Indian company was required to pay tax at 15% plus surcharge cess, which actually took the rate to 20%. Now, because of that, there was a disadvantages to the foreign investor investing in India because of this dividend distribution tax, which increased the overall tax burden on the foreign investment. So from 1st April 2020, after getting a lot of representation made from foreign investor and trade bodies, the Indian government has decided to abolish this dividend distribution tax and bring back the original dividend tax rules, which provides that the dividend would be taxable in the hands of recipient. Now, for foreign investor, this would mean that they will be able to take the benefits of the tax treaty under India-Germany tax treaty. Now, the dividend income would be taxed at only 10%. So there is clearly a saving of 10% after 1st April 2020. Now, here you need to also understand whether tax treaty benefit would be available to you or not. For this, you need to see if you are investing through a partnership firm or a company, because in Germany you have a fiscal transparent partnership entity. So that needs to be seen whether the OECD rules of giving the benefit to the partner instead of partnership firm would apply, or whether India would treat a partnership firm as a opaque entity, because in India partnership is not physically transparent and it's opaque entity. So that's a confusion which generally is there with the Indian tax authority, and that's an area of tax litigation. So you need to be mindful when you are investing through a partnership firm. As far as debt investment is concerned, to promote the foreign investment in India, if you invest the debt, that is the shareholder funds, which is ECB, into a company in a foreign currency, the tax rate applicable is 5% as compared to dividend tax of 10%. So whatever income you earn in the form of interest is only taxable at the rate of 5%, which is a beneficial tax rate. So that can be again one more to explore before deciding an equity and debt mix in the joint venture company. Now, from India perspective, if suppose Indian company is not making enough profit, we have a thin capitalization like rule in India, which provides that the interest would be limited to 30% of the EBITDA, and anything above that would be disallowed for that particular year, but this would be then allowed for next 8 years if you are in profit and if you satisfy other conditions. So that thin capitalization rules is applicable, and for an investor, while making an investment in debt form, needs to be mindful of that. Now, the next point of consideration is which entity you choose to make investment in India. Suppose if you have a group wherein you have the corporate, GmbH entity, and then you have a KG and GmbH and co-KG from Germany, and you have to make investment in India, generally, then you need to, as I mentioned, that while making an investment into equity, you need to see whether the tax treaty benefit would be applicable or available for a partnership firm. Similarly, there could be some points to consider from German tax perspective as well, that when you receive dividend, whether dividend would be taxable in full for a corporate or partnership, etc. So all these permutation and combinations, etc., needs to be explored, and then the decision to be in making an investment into the joint venture in India should be made to make sure that you optimize your tax costs in an efficient and legitimate manner, obviously. Now, one of the issue which Soumitra highlighted, that there is a technical collaboration agreement we have seen in most of the JV agreement, wherein anytime German investor want to invest in India, it also enter into a technical collaboration agreement, or it provides certain management services to the Indian company. Now, while getting the remuneration for those services or for technical collaboration in the form of a royalty, generally foreign company, the Indian company will have to withhold taxes. Now, then when you are entering into such technical collaboration agreement or some other intercompany agreement, you need to be mindful mindful of those tax costs. And if you feel that the tax cost is something which you should not bear, because then there is would not fit right, would be a right fit commercially, then you can think of this net of tax payment requirement, and this particular clause should be then well entered into the relevant agreement. Now, what exactly this net of tax payment is, that if you are say earning royalty of euro 100, now under the India-Germany tax treaty, there would be requirement by the Indian company to withhold tax at the rate of 10%. So you would get ultimately 90 euro, 100 minus 10%, 10, you'd get 90 euro. So in case you feel that this because of this withholding tax, your entire profitability would be shaken, then you can negotiate the net of tax payment, wherein the Indian party would then pay you net euro 100. However, they would cross up the amount to 111, and 10% of that would be 11.11. They would show in their domestic withholding tax return as 111 as a payment and 11.11 as a withholding tax, and then they will make a payment of euro 100. So that's a net of tax requirement, and could be thought of or explored while making an investment into India, specifically when you are entering into agreement like technical collaboration agreement or service agreement, any intercompany agreement. Now, as I mentioned that there is a withholding tax compliance requirement. Similarly, there is a tax compliance requirement whenever any foreign invested company is earning India source income. This is irrespective of JV agreement, but when there is a JV agreement and there is a technical collaboration agreement, you earn a royalty or say service income from India. That income is taxable in India. And because this is a transaction with the related party, because suppose if you are having a joint venture of 50-50, this would qualify as a related party under the domestic tax law transfer pricing regulation. And this needs to be reported under the transfer pricing report. The formal compliance needs to be done both by the Indian company, as well as if the income is taxable in India, this compliance also needs to be done by the foreign company. And similarly, there is a requirement to file the corporate income tax return. Now, there has been some relaxation after 1st April 2020, saying that if the appropriate withholding tax has been deducted as per the domestic tax law by the Indian company, then there is no requirement to file the tax return. But no similar relaxation has been provided for transfer pricing compliance. So on a conservative basis, we suggest that you also file the transfer pricing compliances in India. So I think this was it from the tax consideration, and we would be happy to take any questions at the end of the webinar. Ketan, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Gaurav, for the excellent presentation on the taxation aspect of joint venture. Now, I would like to ask audience, if you have any questions, you can click on raised hand icon, and then we can take your questions one by one. Yeah. Meanwhile, Gaurav, I have and Soumitra, of course, I have received two questions. But first question is about tax. Are there any tax compliances required to be done by foreign nationals to act as director in India JV?
Okay, so in this case, what happens is if you have a JV in India and you have a director, a foreign director sitting in that JV in India, and if they're not earning any income from that particular JV, no director fees, nothing, and the income is basically not taxable in India, then they do not need to undertake any tax compliance separately as far as directors are concerned. But we need to see whether they earn any income or not. So that aspect needs to be checked.
Okay.
But primary FSI, there is no tax compliance requirement for those directors.
And the next question is, I guess it would be for Soumitra. Are there any caps on remittance, both lump sum fees or royalties, made for technology collaborations and licenses or use of trademark and brand name?
Okay, so earlier there used to be restrictions on the payment of royalty and any lump sum fees for these technical collaborations. But now Reserve Bank of India has removed those restrictions. So as of now, there are no restrictions or the caps on the payment of royalty. However, again, as explained by Gaurav in his presentation, that this would again be subject to the transfer pricing guidelines which are applicable to companies, and accordingly it has to be done. So.
Okay. Now, next question is coming from Mr. Oliver Deek. He's asking, are there typical fees for providing technical knowledge, certain percentage of turnover or profit, what is usually accepted?
Okay, so it actually depends upon the negotiation between the parties, but usually what we have seen is our experience is that the royalties are charged as a percentage of net sales. So it depends on the sales.
Okay.
Of course, here transfer pricing regulation would apply, but yeah, I mean, commercially you can choose any amount, and generally company use net sale method, a percentage of net sale, and you make, say, for example, if you make €100 as a payment of royalty, that's arriving after the net sale percentage, but you can make that payment, that there is no capping as such on that. But transfer pricing would then Indian company would have to make certain disallowance while making that payment. So that's only offset which needs to be considered from tax perspective.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Gaurav. Thank you, Soumitra. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions, please click on raised hand icon, or you can also type it in the question box. Here we can take up your questions. The presentations of speaker will be circulated to you post this presentation along with the registration link, which would be uploaded on YouTube. So you can also go through and also share this presentation with your colleagues and your team members. So I don't see any questions coming in, Gaurav and Soumitra. So thank you very much for joining in today's webinar and giving us insights on the joint venture aspects, taxation and also regulation part of it. In case audience has any question, I'll be circulating your email IDs with them, so they will get in touch with you. So thank you very much, and we look forward to welcome you in next webinar on 31st of May on Monday.
Sure. Thank you so much, Ketan, for having us on this webinar.
Thank you. Have a nice day, all of you. Bye-bye.